Run the country like a casino, not a business. Is the Trump administration fiscally conservative? Welcome to the Savage Nation. I realize that none of the, quote, conservatives in the media dare talk about the debt that is now spiraling out of control. Remember when the debt and deficit were a big topic for fiscal conservatives while Barack Hussein Obama was in office? Remember we couldn't get enough of the debt clock? Every talk show host in America, yap, debt. Ron Paul, every other day a speech about the debt that was going to cripple our children and grandchildren. How come that conversation is no longer being had? Could it be because it's all a bunch of garbage? Just partisan politics as usual? Remember the debt clock was constantly spinning and highlighted by the Republicans almost every day? Where's the debt clock now? Well, I put it up on michaelsavage.com. And you can see it's spinning and spinning and spinning like a top. The debt is spiraling out of control. Trump is printing money. The trade deficit last month is the highest it's been since Trump took office. Did you hear what I just said? The trade deficit last month is the highest it's been since Trump took office. Remember when he ran for office, he was on this show and others, and he said that he would renegotiate all these trade deals to give us a better advantage in the trade war. Remember China was an enemy? Well, whatever happened to that talk? Remember Mexico was an enemy and the Macadero plants in Mexico were a problem? Whatever happened to that conversation? Remember his trip to Asia, which was supposed to be such a success? Where is the progress on trade? The U.S. debt clock sits at $20.6 trillion. I know you just went to sleep. $20.6 trillion. When Obama, the socialist, left office, it was at $19.5 trillion. So went up almost $1 trillion since Trump took power. Where is the fiscal conservatism? Each U.S. citizen owes $63,000. Each U.S. taxpayer owes $170,000. That's what you personally owe. Now, what is a fiscal conservative? I know this isn't about Mueller. I know all you want to do is yap, Mueller. I know you want him to go. You want him to be fired. Well, you know what? Run that through your head a few minutes because you're being led down the road again like a bunch of sheeple. So he'll fire him. Then what'll happen? Congress will reappoint him. Have you figured that one out yet, or you haven't heard that yet from the conservative talk show circuit? He'll fire Mueller after launching a war with North Korea, so you won't even see what happened. And the next day, Congress will reappoint Mueller, and then where will we be? Worse than before. What is a fiscal conservative? Have you figured that out, or we stop talking about conservatism and fiscalism? The dictionary definition is one who favors a balanced budget. Remember those antique days? A balanced budget. How quaint that is. Remember we talked about a president who would prefer spending cuts and lower taxes to borrowing? God, how quaint that is. Remember we used to talk about decreasing government size? My, how quaint that is. It's as quaint as the cable cars in San Francisco. Remember we'd promote a free market? How quaint that is. Well, what about the Trump tax plan? There is one group of people that benefited, and that is those who run mega corporations. Basically, the Republican tax plan screwed Donald Trump's base. Are these the acts of fiscal conservatives? Let me ask all of you who are small business owners, who are the number one taxpayers in America, those of you who produce goods and services and file your taxes under S Corporation. Okay, I'm addressing this to you. You are the reason Donald Trump became president. Do you win or lose under his tax proposal? Have you looked into it? Where is the so-called Freedom Caucus and their hawkishness on saving money, on letting the taxpayer keep more? How are small businesses who are trying to make it in this climate going to be able to compete against the big corporations? Now, the people who are running the U.S. Treasury Department are Wall Street Democrats. That's who in charge. That is who is in charge of our economic decisions right now. Whether they're working for Trump or not, they are Wall Street Democrats, Mr. Cohn et al. And you're seeing the results. So let me ask you, you the listeners of the Savage Nation, are you getting the fiscal conservatism you voted for? Yes, call me on that. Yes, the phone number is 855-407-282. And yes, not talk about Mueller if you don't mind. I'm not interested. It's all partisan politics. We got Clinton, they'll get Trump. That's how it works. They're a bunch of small-minded imbeciles wasting our time and our money on nonsense. They got Clinton, now they'll get Trump. And so what's going to come of it? Nothing. It's all nonsense. Also on the Savage Nation today, I have a special surprise for you, which is a vault clip. That's right, my library of tapes. We went back to October 1st, 1994. And you're going to listen to a show. I did a little piece of a show for 2 minutes or so, and you'll see whether I've changed in my voice, my delivery, or my orientation. We're going to play pieces from the antique archives of the Savage Nation from time to time. But the questions for this hour or this segment is this. Is this administration fiscally conservative? Do you own a small business, and will you do better or worse under the Republican tax plan? Is this administration running the country like a business or like a casino? How about another question? Old Jared Kushner, diplomat-in-chief, a man with great experience on the international stage, was sent to make peace in the Middle East. That's something even Moses couldn't do. But apparently Jared thought he could do it. I've never seen anything more imbecilic in my life than threatening, and it is a threat to the Arabs, and they do exist, and there are millions of them, threatening to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. I think it is the stupidest mistake this administration could ever make, unless they're so smart that they want to trigger a Middle East conflagration to get our mind off Mueller's investigation. Did you hear what I just said? This is the stupidest thing they could ever do, is move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem right now to appease a few Zionists in the administration. And I'm using that word as a loaded word because that's who else is pushing them to do this now? Why does Israel need this trouble right now? Why does the U.S. need this trouble right now? Why does Jordan need this trouble right now? Why would Trump inform Abbas he intends to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem right now? Why? I'll tell you what it's going to trigger, a resurgence of the Ottoman Empire under Erdogan in Turkey. But maybe that's a little too much for the average red-blue listener. Maybe that's a little too much for the 2 legs good, 4 legs bad. But I don't think it's too much for the Savage Nation. Okay, my friends, I'd rather talk about that than Conyers' thigh up the church hand. I don't care about Conyers. It's actually sad in a way. You want me to celebrate an old man getting thrown out? I won't do it. I won't do it because when they came for Conyers, you didn't raise your voice because you were not a Democrat from his state. But when they come for Trump on the same accusations, there'll be no one left to raise their voice of opposition to the witch hunt being run by whom? Who do you think is running this witch hunt against all these men? Hitting like a scythe both left and right. So when they finally come for Trump, they can say, see, it's not partisan. Have you figured out who it is? Because I have. My guess, the Obamas. They're that smart. The same Obama team that ruled with an iron fist for 8 straight years, a seamless 8 years of deceit, is now running this scythe, both left and right, cleaning out the field on the Democrat side to replace them with even more radical leftists. By the way, that's who will replace Conyers, in order to go after Trump. And when they do, there'll be no objection because they'll say, see, we're not partisan. Well, that's what I want to talk about right now. Mueller subpoenaed Trump's Deutsche Bank records. You saw that on Drudge this morning at 6 in the morning. Mueller subpoenas Trump Deutsche Bank records, loan millions for real estate ventures. What do you think this means? Do you think this can easily be dismissed as fake news? No, my friends, don't be deceived. This cannot be easily dismissed as fake news. This is big news. All of it is big news. These questions are big news. Is the timing right to move the embassy to Jerusalem right now? Why would Trump even suggest such a thing right now? Is this administration fiscally conservative or fiscally casino? This is the Savage Nation, 855-407-282. Be here or be nowhere. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. For some reason, I'm playing Irish music today. You turn it off already. All right, play it, whatever. I don't care. Turn it off. I'm not interested. It sounded good in the morning, but by the time it plays on the show, it's another story. I'll have to shift to something else. Okay. Questions. questions. It's simple. We're talking about fiscal conservatism. I'm asking you, is this administration fiscally conservative? Please don't call if you don't even know what you're talking about. If you're on Social Security and you don't pay taxes, don't call me. If you're a welfare recipient, please don't call me. I want to hear from those of you who elected Trump, the gigantic independent vote, those of you who are small business owners who file under S corporation status. Have you looked at the tax plan put forward by the Trump administration? We were told it would be reduced to like 25%. We were all waiting for the big tax relief. Now we find out we're actually going to pay more. The tax plan is a disaster for those who voted for Trump, not the Social Security holders, but the large base of business owners. You, who made up your mind saying, I'd rather have him than her, because if she wins, she's going to raise our, let us say, our personal income tax by God knows what. It could be 65%, 70%. We heard numbers from Bernie Sanders to take us back to the 50s at 92%. We said, no, let's make this all about fiscal policies. And Trump is a businessman. He's a conservative. We're sitting here holding our breath, and he pulls out the top hat, smiles at us, gives us the big smile, and presto, pulls out a rabbit. And the rabbit is a disaster for those of us who are waiting for some relief. Now, on top of that, the deficit is a huge issue. No more for you, I guess, because it's no longer an issue for the media, the conservative media, which doesn't exist, by the way. There is no conservative media. U.S. debt spinning out of control. We heard about this day and night when Obama was president. Day and night, trade deficit too high. He's selling us down the river. It's worse now than it was then. How is that even possible that you don't know this? Oh, I know why. I know why, because you haven't heard it anywhere. You certainly didn't hear it on Fox News yet. You'll hear about it tomorrow or the next day. Some of them actually listen to the show and get good ideas from this show, which is great. But we should be talking about the fact that Trump is not a fiscal conservative, and those around them are actual Democrats. They always have been. WABC, John, you'll have the first word on the Savage Nation. What's your point?
Hey, Michael. My wife and I, who is an immigrant from South Africa, actually, we own a thriving architectural practice in Westchester County, New York. And with this salt elimination, she and about the 4 contractors that she works with, and they employ collectively about 120-ish people, are going to be hit very hard by this, because we already, through our local realtors, are seeing everyone saying, whoa, I'm not buying a house, I'm not renovating, I'm not doing anything until I see.
What you're saying in New York State and in California, Trump is punishing these 2 states for being Democrat by removing the state tax deduction from the federal income taxes. Is that what you're referring to? John, is that what you're referring to? Gone. John's gone. All right, whatever. The phone dropped. So the geniuses behind the tax plan are going to punish those of us who live in California, even if we're conservative and voted not only for Trump, but helped Trump get elected, and those of you in New York who are admittedly a minority of the votership, but you do exist. A lot of you are business owners. You file under Chapter S. You are paying an onerous 39.6% on the Chapter S, the same way you would pay under a private, let's say, personal income tax. And we were told by Trump we were going to get a reduction to like 25%. And we're waiting for something. Then we said, maybe it'll be 32. Then we heard it's 35. It's nothing. You got no deduction. As what I'm hearing right now is you're actually going to pay more. They're going to hit you so hard. Now, when you eliminate, when you can no longer deduct New York State income tax from your federal, and you're still going to pay the same 39.6, you're paying more money. Same for me in California. So let me explain to you. We got screwed. And there's one answer to this. Here's the answer, because I've said it to you over the many years I've been on the radio. When both parties get along and agree on something, you can be 100% sure of one thing, and that is that the voter is getting screwed royally. That you can take to the bank. And they both got together to screw us, especially those of us who are small business owners and file as Chapter S. We're getting destroyed. That's what John was just saying. Housing is going to collapse in New York and California. Construction will collapse in New York and California and the other states. What the hell are these people thinking? And we're also talking about the idiocy of saying they're going to move the U.S. Embassy from Jerusalem to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. Why now, Mr. Trump? Who advised you on this? Could that be the brilliant son-in-law, the Metternich of our time, the man who has such great and able experience in the Middle East, the man who speaks Arabic and understands the Quran? Not. Why would you move the embassy at this time when there is already so much turmoil in the world, Mr. Trump? I would ask you if you asked me, but you don't ask me, but I'm telling you on the radio, and it will get up to your level, I guarantee you. Trump informs Abbas he intends to move U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, Palestinians say. I will tell you what will happen. Erdogan of Turkey has already said it's a red line for Muslims. Erdogan controls one of the largest Muslim nations on earth, a very powerful military, by the way, called Turkey. Turkey was once the center of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire will be resurgent if Trump does this. It is the stupidest move at the worst possible time. Who came up with this one? Master. All right, we heard it. Master of puppets. Now, for those of you who think that my job is to be a bootlicker like Wallbanger and others, you're mistaken. That is not the job of those of us in talk radio. Whether we are Democrats or Republicans, our job is not to sit here like a stooge licking the boots of whoever's in power. In fact, it probably violates federal law, but I'll go into that another day. If you take your show and spend all day on your show promoting a single candidate, you're violating FCC rules, by the way. And I've never done it. I never will do it. I'm an independent voice in the radio business. That's how I've survived a quarter of a century. Now, I want to say something to you who you may not understand this. I consider myself, whether he considers it or not, I don't know. I consider myself a part of Donald Trump's radio cabinet. That's an informal group of advisors. Remember, Ronald Reagan had a kitchen cabinet of unappointed individuals. He was smart enough to call upon people in various walks of life who were smart to give their opinion on important matters, and then he would make his own decision. So I, as a member of the media who is listened to some extent, after all, Trump's war was number one on the New York Times list. How did that happen? Was it a fluke? It was a mass movement. It was a mass movement, and I, like Moses, knew how to move the masses. I knew how to inspire you. I heard the roar of the masses, just as I hear the roar of God in my ears. I felt the irresistible roar of the listeners, and I harnessed that force. And with that force, I helped elect Donald Trump. You are America. And so I am speaking to you, America, who count upon me to be as honest as I can in my analysis. And if you don't like what I'm saying, I can't help it. This is my opinion. Something is very wrong on every level. There's only a few good things happening. The ban of immigrants from those largely Muslim nations was a very good thing. The appointment of those on the Supreme Court who appear to be going along with conservative viewpoints, very good thing. Fiscally, a disaster, a blowout. A blowout. A blowout. For me, the last straw, and I was iffy along the way, I saw what was happening, is the tax deal. I got screwed. I took it very personally because I speak for the large number of voters out there who elected Donald Trump praying for tax relief from an onerous, socialist-oriented government. They figured it was 39.6, like personal. They get a reduction to 25. Maybe they get 28. They say, thank God. I'll take that 10% less that I'm going to pay in federal taxes. I would have expanded my media company. I would have taken the additional money, and I would have hired people. I don't know what I mean, just would have said, it's great. I have extra money. I'm going to build a whole new division of Utopia Productions. It's not that I need the money, but it would be fun. I'd have some fun. I'd create a television division or something like that. I'd make documentaries. I'd hire a documentary filmmaker full-time. I'd hire film editors. Just to do stuff that I wanted to do. I would do all that with the extra money, but I'm not doing it. I'm only one man. There are millions of you out there who would have expanded your offices. You're not expanding jack. That's a very big story, and I understand that talking about taxes is about as boring as it gets. But I'm going to talk about it for a little bit longer. And so I asked a loaded question. Is this administration fiscally conservative? Well, no. Is timing right to move the embassy to Jerusalem? Perhaps the greatest mistake he could ever make. It would set off a Middle East conflagration unlike any you've ever seen. Insanity. Who's pushing this? 16 rabbis from Brooklyn? Without thinking about the consequences for the world and the nation? Who would be pushing this right now? We all heard about this during the last number of years, that it would be religiously important to relocate the embassy. I heard it for years. I personally don't care whether it's in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. What does it matter to me as an American citizen? Whether an embassy is in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, why should it matter to me? We have a U.S. embassy in Israel. What's the need for doing it now when he's in so much trouble? What is this all about? Who's whispering in his ear? Now, I understand the religious significance of it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the timing of that. I know, according to biblical prophecy, because I have a friend who emails me, and I certainly have known this, the Christians, especially the religious Christians, believe that eventually, according to biblical prophecy, Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel. I'm fully aware of that. However, there is a timing issue right now. And the issue is, why now? It's not that important. Is it a pressing issue? Let me ask you, is that what you get up in the morning and say, oh, if only he'd moved the embassy to Jerusalem, I could rest the rest of my life? The hell with the Arabs. We don't care what they do. They could burn down the Temple Mount. It doesn't matter. God bless him. He moved it to Jerusalem. What is he doing this for? It's a mistake. Why is he doing that? Phone number is 855-407-282, Fiscal Conservatism Embassy. This is Michael Savage, a leading member of the radio cabinet of the Trump administration. You've never heard that before. I know it's not Democrat, Republican. Radio cabinet. What does that mean? It's funny. It's an interesting statement. Radio cabinet. You think of an old radio with a wooden cabinet. No, I'm talking about an equivalent to Reagan's kitchen cabinet. Intelligent, knowledgeable advisors who the president advises from time to time, and then the president makes his own decision. In fact, he should have such a cabinet. He shouldn't rely solely upon his immediate family. It's a mistake to rely only upon one or two people, no matter how smart they may be. And we don't even know how smart they may be. But that's a mistake to only rely upon a few people. You need a wide range of opinion. And the most important amongst them would be someone who speaks the truth from the heart and from the mind, someone who knows what he's talking about. Robert, you know what I'm going to ask you to do during the break? Robert Borowski is the able board operator. Remember years ago when Trump was on this show, I don't know, it was not in the last year of his running for office, but before that he came on, he once called me from his limo. Maybe the year before that. I don't know the year. 2015, maybe Doug can pick it up. And he said, hi, this is Donald Trump. And the first thing he ever said to me on my show was, well, Michael, he said, I listen to you because one thing I know is you'll say what's on your mind. You're the type that doesn't think about the consequences, but you speak what's on your mind. And he liked that because he comes from that background. I can guarantee you he speaks what's on his mind. I can guarantee you Fred, his beloved father, spoke what's on his mind. I can guarantee you that the men in the construction trades in Manhattan who we had to work with day and night spoke what was on their mind. Whether they were in the plumbing or the electrical unions, they told him what they thought. That's how he built the buildings. They all spoke real language to him. I'm telling you like it is. This is what I think. I'm saying, well, am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong. If I was wrong, I wouldn't even say it. You think I would opine this suggestion of mine or these suggestions of mine if I didn't think I was right? I 100% know I'm right. So something's wrong with the whole picture. And I think it's all related to the fact that he is surrounded by Democrats in his administration. Mr. Cohn, as smart as he may be from Goldman Sachs, has been a lifetime Democrat. Jared Kushner, lifetime Democrat. Daughter, wonderful woman, lifetime liberal Democrat. So what do you think? I'm making this up out of thin air? I don't think you understand where I'm coming from. Well, those are some of the topics. I think I've absorbed them. But let's take a quick call or two. Anyone disagree with me or agree with me on this? ABC John, line 8. Did he call or did I speak to him or not? I don't know if it's the same John. Is this you?
The other guy was from Westchester, but I'm in the same boat as he is. I saw my accountant today, and we are screwed out here.
Why?
I'm not getting no 20%. I'm not getting anything, and they're going.
You're getting nothing. Did you vote? Wait, did you like me? Wait, did you vote for Trump because you thought he would be better for your business in terms of taxes?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, we all did. Even those of us who could care less about gay wedding cakes or Muslims in the air said, "Okay, I just want some tax relief. At least they'll give us that." We're not even getting that. That's the point.
Where's Apple's money? I thought it'd be in the country by now, being spent on building roads. What happened to that story?
Oh, the infrastructure we heard so much about. Roads, bridges, tunnels?
Yeah. Come on, we gotta keep moving in this country. We're going good. We're gonna put the brakes now? It's ridiculous. And the Jerusalem thing opens a whole can of worms. The stupidity. Does anybody know their history in this country?
Well, I think some of us do in radio. I don't think they do in the administration. I don't think they studied history before they occupied the White House. Do you?
No, and I don't think the general population in this country gives a damn either. And they better start waking up to what's really happening.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to tell them what's really happening, and whether they like the news or not, I can't help it. That is why I'm speaking from the level of where I'm. Well, do you appreciate my speaking, saying it like it is, or you want me to just sit here and lick his boots like some do in the media now?
Hey, he's got to wake up soon later. He's a New York guy. I see him speaking like that Pocahontas joke. I know 10 guys that would tell that same joke. They live in Queens. We voted for a guy who comes from Queens. I know the type. That's the way he is. And he should be smart enough to wake up and do the right thing because he knows how to do that. He lived it.
Well, as a small business owner, bottom line, are you upset with the tax plan or happy with it?
It's upset. There's no tax plan.
That's all. In other words, you got screwed. You voted for one thing and you got another. You voted for Donald Trump on the taxes and you got Hillary light. John, I'm sending you a gift, but here's the challenge. If you can name the book of mine that's in the bookstores now, I'll give you one. What's it called?
Say,
sorry, you'll have to go buy one. It's called God, Faith, and Reason. You have to know the name of it. By the way, happy holidays from the IRS, those of you listening to me on the fiscal thing, because you could be next. IRS collection agents know companies hand out bonuses this time of year. That's right. Well, they're coming after your bonus. Look, it's your choice. Explain to your family that the IRS garnished your wages and seized your bank account, so take your holidays back. That is what happens when you call the #1 tax resolution firm, Optima Tax Relief. Optima knows that behind every tax problem are very good people like yourself, people with families, homes, savings, paychecks that need protection now. No one knows the IRS ins and outs better than Optima, which explains how they've resolved over $500 million in tax debt for their clients and why they are A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. I want you to take your and your family's holidays back. You can start at the moment you call Optima Tax Relief. It's simple, 800-731-2474. I know it's a lot of numbers that you hear on radio. This is the one you're going to need right now, 800-731-2474. Write it down, please, Optima Tax Relief, 800-731-2474.
I did this call because you've been my friend. You've been so honest and straight and fair, and I appreciate it, and I always will.
Who was that? That couldn't be the president. What year was that? Anyone know? September of last year. Why? It's so nice to hear from you, Mr. President. Congratulations on being elected to the presidency. I'm so glad you finally called the Savage Nation and spoke to your listeners, my listeners who elected you. Can we possibly hear that again so they get a touch of the president again?
I did this call because you've been my friend. You've been so honest and straight and fair, and I appreciate it, and I always will.
That's so nice to hear. It really is. It's really nice to hear, and I'm sure he means it. And as a member of Trump's radio cabinet, a position I appointed myself to, and a cabinet that I created on my own, in my own mind, moving the embassy to Jerusalem right now will kick off a third world war in the Middle East, because you could say, okay, someone says to me, I don't get what's so confusing about making a move against Erdogan's desire to conquer the region. I don't understand why you're against it. It's quite simple, because the world is unstable enough right now. We don't need more instability. Why would we want to make a move against Turkey right now? Why? Right now, Turkey is actually an ally of Israel. Did you know that? I don't think people understand this. Turkey, which has an amazingly powerful military. You say, Turkey, what is it? Well, go all the way back to the movie Gallipoli. I think it was done so many years ago. The movie, was it with Mel Gibson, if my memory doesn't fail me? Gallipoli, right? Whoever was in it. Gallipoli was about an action in World War I where so many thousands of Allied troops were killed by the Turks as they tried to invade Turkey, and they were shocked by the loss. Incidentally, it was one of Winston Churchill's great losses, was at Gallipoli. He was one of the leaders. I don't think people know that. It was a disaster for the British Army at Gallipoli. The point is that the Turks are phenomenal warriors. They come from a warrior society. The Israelis know that, and they are at peace with Turkey right now, kind of a tense peace. They trade with each other. They have good relations with each other. There's no war between Turkey and Israel. Why would the Israelis even want to move the embassy to Jerusalem? Do you think the average Israeli wants their embassy in Jerusalem? So who wants it there? A group of fanatical religious people and a group of fundamentalist Christians who think it means the beginning of the end of the world as we know it and the return of you-know-who. That's simple. So it's a religious decision, not a it's a religious decision. It's not a politically wise decision. Do you get that? There's a big difference between what is politically intelligent and what is intelligent from a religious point of view. At least I think so. Is the Trump administration fiscally conservative? We'll move on. U.S. trade deficit rises to $48.7 billion on record imports. This year, we're running a huge deficit of $462 billion, up 12% from a year earlier. How's that for fiscal conservatism, Henry? Welcome back, lads and lassies, to the Savage Nation here in Dublin. Yeah, we're going to go away from death and taxes and fiscal conservatism and moving embassies just for a moment. As you well know, a talk radio show is supposed to be somewhat entertaining and enlivening, give you a little inspiration. Some people go to sleep listening to my melodious voice. Some dogs stop howling listening to my voice. Some babies stop crying listening to my voice. Others listen for other reasons. And as you know, I'm a man of many moods, many talents, many ideas, many thoughts. This morning I woke up at 5 o'clock, and it was cold as heck out there. I like to sleep with the door open with no heat. I live near the water, and it's just really cold and bitter this time. It's when I start thinking of Florida. Then, of course, when I get to Florida, I can't wait to get back to California. And when I get to California, I can't wait to get to Southern California. It's the way of the world. It's the way it's always been, especially amongst a certain group of people who, when they're one place, they think of another, and then when they're in the other, they think back of the other place. It's just the way it is. So as I was saying, about 5 in the morning, I woke up, and I wrote a poem to myself about a pub, an imaginary pub in Ireland. I'm going to read it to you. It's very short, just to entertain you. It's holiday time. Maybe I would say 0.2% of the audience will appreciate this. The rest of you want to hear about Mueller ad infinitum, ad nauseum, day and night. Mueller, 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 go. Time for Mueller to go. Mueller, Mueller, Mueller. Deutsche Bank, Mueller, 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 Mueller. No, sirree, Bob. 5 million years of evolution was not meant for that. So I wrote myself a poem entitled Grinding Down's Pub. You say, how'd you come up with that? I don't know. It was at dawn, and I didn't want to get out of a cold bed. And so I thought of an imaginary pub in Ireland called Grinding Downs Pub. Can I read it to you? Yes or no? Raise your hand if you want to hear it. I used to call this show Cafe Savage back in the early days of this show in the early 90s. And I used to have a soundbite of clinking cups, glasses, cappuccino machines hissing away. And I'd say, come on and imagine me running a cafe. Those of you who remember me on KSFO in the early days. Imagine you're coming into my cafe. I'm a cafe owner. You're just hanging out. And whatever we're doing that day. So today I'm serving you a poem I wrote last night. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. You say, he's going through one of his moods again. Let's humor him. And that's the way it is. So shall I read it or not? Robert, you vote yes or no. Jim fell asleep at the thought of it. He fell into a catatonia. No, he says yes. Okay, little Irish music. It'll be over in less than 3 minutes, so hold your nose if you want to blank this out. Maybe we could run that in the background as a bed. Grinding Downs Pub. Sat in a corner themselves alone, minding the store of their eyes alone. The fatherly man and his newly wife, so thought the Irish in that pub of strife. Each night they'd come to sip their drinks, he a beer, she a clink. The Irish paid no more than a glance, they did. In time 2 sconces, in a corner they'd be. He a beer, she a clink. As time ticked down on the sleepy chime, she bore a child who wept so mild. The babe did weep without stop, for born a lonesome star so far. Into a man did our manger child grow, a man who ran softer so far, a man who ran so far, to flee that prison of the abandoned village, and hope once more for freedom's door. As he, an older man himself, did hear, both he and she were resting near. Together alone on the village heath, he sent a newborn's garland wreath. And now back to boring politics as usual. That which does not stir my soul at all. We could talk about Mueller, evil Democrats, wonderful Republicans. And we can feed the fodder so well received in the American media. Mueller's Trump-Russia probe cost nearly $7 million so far. You know, I try to think back to when I was not in talk radio, when I was an ordinary human being. And I did other things, national science consultant, ethnobotanist, nutritionist, author of health books. I paid a certain amount of attention to politics, but it didn't rule my every thought. It wasn't every second. I didn't think about this every minute. To me, I knew politics was about partisanship. My father taught it all to me in the streets of the Bronx as he held my little hand and he looked up at the buildings. He said, look, let me tell you something. He said, here's the way it works. There's 2 parties in this country, both a group of gangsters. And the way it works is one group of gangsters wins, the other one is on the outside. And when they're on the outside, they point fingers at those on the inside and try to get them in trouble. Then they win. Then they get in power. And the party that was out is now in, and the party that was in is now out. And this goes on and on and on. He said, and so the people are deceived, Michael. Don't get too involved with it because it's all a bunch of garbage. And that, my friends, is the truth. So Trump predicts perfecto tax reform deal soon, and we talked about that because as an S corporation myself, I'm not getting a dime off on my taxes, nor are all the small business owners in the United States of America. No S corporation is going to get a discount, nothing, zero. So we talked about that. We talked about the U.S. debt, which is a topic that used to be a big deal when Obama was president. Remember, every day, the debt clock, the debt clock. The debt clock, the debt clock, debt clock, debt clock. Now we don't hear anything about the debt. Why is it? Because it's all part of the shuck and jive. That was a game to play when the Democrats were in power, that they would tax and spend. Remember, we heard they would tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend. Well, tell me how this is any different. This is tax and spend. In fact, the spending is higher than it was under Obama. Now, never forget that in the last year of the Bush administration, I alone was not invited to the White House. All of the other bootlickers were. All of those that you think are real great conservatives went to the Bush White House and became water carriers for George Bush. They even admitted it years later. They admitted that they had become water carriers. Well, they're back again. Now they're water carriers for this administration. If they want to carry water, that's their business, but I don't. I'm not good at carrying water. And as you may recall, if you listen to the show, if you want to hear this at all, in the last year of the Bush administration, I said to you, wait a minute, he's not a fiscal conservative. He's a fiscal socialist. Those are my words. Why did I say that? Because Bush blew up the budget deficit more so than the previous three administrations combined. So we knew that Bush was a big government guy, and we didn't like that. Do you remember that? Well, guess who's running the country now? The same exact people. Only there's a new figurehead called Donald Trump. So, I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's my job. My job is to sit there on the outside and say, wait a minute, hold on. This is not what they say it is. This is not tax reform. The only big tax breaks here are for the major corporations. They're going to do great. And then we hear about in this tax proposal put together by Goldman Sachs, incidentally, that corporations like Google, Facebook, and the other giants have been hiding money offshore, Ireland, et cetera, wherever they hide it, at no taxes or low taxes through their games. They're going to repatriate trillions of dollars. Sounds good, doesn't it? And you think that they're going to build new factories and they're going to hire Americans? Not so fast. Because I actually studied what happened the last time there was a slight repatriation at low taxation. Almost none of the money was spent in America on building new infrastructure in terms of factories and jobs. It didn't happen. And so unless this tax reform plan has a requirement that these corporations who've been hiding money in foreign governments, unless they are required to take a certain percentage of the money they bring back, and in writing saying you're going to repatriate $1 trillion, let's say Facebook, whatever the number is, make it $100 billion. I don't know what the number is, $500 billion, and it's hidden in Ireland at low taxation, and they can't bring it home because they'll be taxed at the U.S. rate. So they're going to be able to bring it home at a very low rate, but there's no teeth in the bill saying, Mr. Zuckerberg, you have to build 50 new factories in the U.S., and you have to hire American. Or, Mr. Zuckerberg, you have to build 500 new trade schools in America to train U.S. tech workers to stop bringing them in from India and everywhere else. Now, that would be a repatriation plan that I would advise the president think about. But then again, I am only a member of the president's radio cabinet. I'm the only member of the cabinet, and I have no idea whether the president listens to anything I say. There is no way I would know or not know. And so I only put it out there publicly to the millions of people who listen to the show religiously and hope that it does filter up to the president, who was the commander-in-chief as well. Because unless the tax reform contains clauses which require that these offshore accounts, which are being repatriated, build things in America, including trade schools, we're not going to get very much on that as well. It's another jive job. We're also talking about the idiocy of moving the embassy to Jerusalem, the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Whether you believe that that is correct from a religious point of view is irrelevant. What is important is world peace and stability. And to see that Trump is planning to move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem while the Arabs are going nuts, and the president of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, said it will be a red line for Muslims, should be enough for Trump to reconsider this. Turkey President Erdogan tells Trump declaring Jerusalem Israel's capital is a red line for Muslims. Say, well, who cares about Erdogan? You could take that position. But you should know that Jerusalem is home to holy sites for Muslim, Christians, and Jews. If you've been to Jerusalem, you know that that's the fact. And as you well know, this is a flashpoint for Muslims. And you say, well, who cares about Muslims? Well, I think you ought to care about 1/5 of the world's population, especially when the leader of one of the most powerful Muslim nations with a real powerful military says it's a red line. I think you ought to think twice about moving it now. Why now? Is everything so good for Trump right now? given the world situation, given the domestic situation, given the investigation that's ongoing, fair or unfair? Is this the right time to set off a shockwave in Israel, in the Middle East? Tell me, what sense does this make? Whose idea is this? Who came up with this? I don't even know who would be pushing them on this right now. Morty, on WABC, go ahead, please. What do you think about moving the embassy to Jerusalem?
I think it's totally idiocy. I think it's BS. I think there's no reason for it whatsoever. I think it will just cause people problems, kill people's lives. Lives will be ruined from it. There's no point. From a religious point of view, I don't.
Now, Morty, are you Muslim?
No, I'm Jewish, actually, Orthodox Jew.
Oh, interesting. And you have that viewpoint because they'll accuse you of being a fake Jew next.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone who disagrees with this administration is called fake news.
Yeah, 100%.
So now any Jew who doesn't want the embassy moved is what, a fake Jew?
Any Jew that doesn't want the embassy moved is a fake Jew. Yeah. No, of course.
No, but you're talking about the real political fallout of moving an embassy right now. What's the point of moving it right now? Can you figure it out, Morty? Why?
I can't. Maybe you could, because I really cannot figure out the reason at the point that to move the embassy.
I can't figure it out. That's why I'm criticizing the idea. I think it's the stupidest timing in the history of the world for Trump to be making this an issue right now. Why does he have to stir up another hornet's nest now in the Middle East?
Yeah, I don't see a point.
And you're a religious Jewish man.
I'm a religious Jew, ultra-Orthodox.
And how in your community do they feel about moving the embassy to Jerusalem? Is that an issue?
I haven't heard much talk about it. But
yeah, nobody cares. Who is pushing this?
Yeah, what's the difference? Like, what's the point?
I don't. Who's pushing this in the Trump administration? Who? What, did God come down and say you have to move the embassy?
It's garbage. No reason for it.
Morty, would you like a copy of my new book?
Yeah, it's called God, Faith, and Reason.
Oh, you were ready. You loaded yourself up. See, that's what I like, a smart Jewish listener who knew already what I was going to test you for the title to give you a free book. See, you were ready. It shows you were good in school. You knew what the teacher was going to ask. Morty, you got a free copy of it coming out. I just got the good news that my publisher, the wonderful Center Street publisher, who's been with me for 5 books now or more, I don't know how many bestsellers we've had together, has agreed to pay for upfront placement in all the major bookstores right through the Christmas holidays. That's a fabulous statement for me to tell you about because it means you're going to find God, Faith, and Reason in the bookstores when you go look for it. It may not be in the front of the store. It could be under faith and under Christianity, Christian and faith. If that's Christian and inspiration, if it's there, it's there. That's not such a bad thing. Maybe the Christians will find God, Faith, and Reason and buy it on a whim. Who knows? But I do want you to go look for it and see if you have any reason to not buy it. I'll be right back. Jewish gangster finds God. 1 page from God, Faith, and Reason. I suppose everyone's challenges are relative. I had some hardship in my life with a father who couldn't be there for me as much as I wanted, and with the loss of my brother Jerome. But there was much joy and love in my childhood as well. My father worked all those hours to provide the kind of opportunities for me that he hadn't had, and I made more good decisions than bad. One of the more interesting interviews I've done on the Savage Nation was with a man who'd grown up under much different circumstances and for a long time made much worse decisions than I did. His name is Michael Hardy, and he was the last of the old-time Jewish gangsters. Bugsy Siegel was his godfather. He was, by his own admission, a murderer. This was a man who grew up in the even tougher Brownsville section of Brooklyn, New York. Growing up in a place like that makes you a hard person. It's inescapable. But there's a difference between being very hard-minded, very tough, very uncompromising, and then crossing that line and being able to cut somebody's throat with a soda bottle. I asked him what had driven him to become the criminal he used to be. It's all in God, Faith, and Reason. The chapter is Jewish Gangster Finds God. I want you to understand it's not just a proselytizing book. It's filled with stories, some of which come directly from this radio program over the last number of years. And I thought this was one of the better stories from this radio program. It's fabulous. Jewish Gangster Finds God and God, Faith, and Reason. And I promise you there's no sappy poetry that will make you think that I am breathing the wrong air in San Francisco. Let me go back to just for a minute. Remember about 4 weeks ago, I got outraged over the elephant thing when this Zinke guy in the Interior Department was saying he wants to let people bring in trophies with elephant heads, tusks, rhinoceros horns, lion's feet, elephant tails. I went crazy on this show. How dare this bum do a thing like that in a time like this, I said, in plain English. I also said Zinke ought to be fired. I don't know where they got this character from, but he's like a guy with a scythe. If ever I were a cartoonist, I would portray Zinke as a man with a scythe, like the Grim Reaper, decimating the lands in the West. So now Trump today is being asked by this Interior Secretary, Ryan Zinke, to shrink the boundaries of 2 more national monuments a day after rolling back by 50% and 84%, respectively, protected areas in Utah. Now he wants more. And what does he want this for? Additional grazing, ranching, fishing, hunting, and other activities in those locations. You say, well, that's terrific. That's free market. No, it isn't. Some tribes have already sued over that decision, arguing that the Federal Antiquities Act does not give the president the power to reduce previously declared monuments. You have to ask yourself, who benefits from this? Do you think the American people benefit from this? What, are you going to get a four-wheeler and go out there? No. Zinke said some of the protected land should be legally set aside for logging rather than monuments. And they're also considering what to do about private land within the monument borders. In other words, it's a gigantic resources grab. You've heard of land grabs? This is a resource grab by Zinke and the cronies around him. His small cadre of very powerful rancher friends, logger friends, mining friends are going to make billions of dollars off this. And I don't see how the American people benefit from this. And I would say that there's a very high likelihood, knowing that there's larceny in the hearts of all men. Knowing that there is larceny in the hearts of all men, I'd say there's a large possibility that the logging will be turned over to Chinese companies, and the wood from our American lands out there in Utah and Nevada will wind up in China rather than in the United States. It'll go to the highest bidder. This is a resource grab. It's disgusting. It's arbitrary. What Trump did here is a disgrace. I know from the point of view of the knee-jerk conservative. Now, when you're a knee-jerk conservative, you're not really a conservative. You're just a partisan who is simply a knee-jerk supporter of anything the administration does. But you have to think about what this does to the people who oppose it. And there are people who oppose it who are not even Democrats. They're called Native American Indians, once known as the original peoples of this continent. Now, I know that we've seen bones from peoples who had been here prior to the Native Americans, but they were not here in the numbers that the Native Americans were here, which were in the many, many millions, nor did they create whole societies, cultures, and a civilization as vast as they did. Okay, so they lost it. I understand that. But the fact of the matter is they're still here, and their traditions are still here, and the graves of their ancestors are still here. What would you do if you woke up and you found out that a president was going to take the cemetery in which your great-grandfather and great-grandmother were buried and remove the cemetery from a protected status, and without even disinterring their bodies, that's if they're even going to do that here, they're going to plow it over and build a high-rise over it? It's unbelievable to me in this day and age that we could have such behavior. It's brutish. It's barbaric is what it is, in my opinion. The largest rollback of monument declarations in American history just occurred in front of your eyes. You say, well, that's great. I'm a conservative. Well, think about what you mean by the word conservative. What does the word conservative mean? To rape everything? To plow over land and turn it into a shopping mall? To pave over the entire monument out there because somebody will make some money off it? That makes you a conservative? That makes you a brutish idiot? No, my friends, not everything that is done in the name of conservatism is even conservative. It's certainly not intelligent, let alone sensitive. The largest rollback of monument declarations in American history. And while we're talking about this, before you get bored, Trump said When I raised such a ruckus as a member of the radio cabinet here on this show, and it got to him, I know it for a fact. Never mind a hurry. He did it because of Rosie O'Donnell. No, he did it because of my show. I know that for a fact. I don't need you to confirm it. I was so outraged by the elephant thing. So let me ask you something. The same Zinke who did that with the elephants, you can bring in the tusks or sell them to China. Trump said he would look into that by the end of the week and finalize whether he would ban the import of such trophies from Africa. He never did. I fear that the ivory hunters got to him. I fear the ivory hunters are laughing in Zinke's office. I fear the ivory hunters are behind this. The same type of mentality that would let you kill an elephant for his tusks. The same ivory hunters are land hunters, slashing the borders of these monuments in Utah, reducing them by 50% and 84%, which represents the largest rollback of monument declarations in American history. I may be the only conservative in the American media who is also a very strict conservationist. I may be the only member of the American media who has actually preserved park lands in many cases. You may not know about that, but many years I was not investing in Harlem real estate. I was not scheming to put people in jail as a lawyer. I was not a sportscaster pretending to be a conservative. I was not using a nail gun to put up wallboard. I was walking the earth to preserve pieces of the earth that were worth preserving. And I'm proud that I did that. I sacrificed for myself and my family by doing it. I made no money from it. I had to borrow in order to do these things, but I thought it was worth doing. And my idealism paid off in the sense that I'm still working all these years later, and I'm working in a field that I love so much because God rewarded me for my good works, as he will punish those for their bad works. I truly believe that. I got to tell you, this is a very big topic for me. I've been an active conservationist my whole life. And so, to me, this is stupidity. It's the same as, would be the same as permitting the use of DDT all over again in America. Or waking up and finding out that the U.S. government has decided under this Zinke that they could start using malathion in the rivers and the lakes of the West because it would be good for killing something. I don't know, and poison the earth. Remember the time that eagles could no longer bear the young because the egg shells were cracking in the early days of the environmental movement or the conservation movement? I like the conservation movement better because environmentalism is not conservationism. It's two different things. Environmentalism is using the conservation movement for a political end which approximates Marxism. It's different than a conservationist. I'm a conservationist, not an environmentalist. Make no mistake, there's two different things here. So I've been an ardent conservationist and animal rights activist my entire life. Proudly, I would say that to you. And so when I see that he's rolling back these monuments here, for what reason? Well, to rape the land. Greed. Just greed. Just simply greed. Foresting, lumber, mineral rights. Doesn't matter if they take the Indian graves and plow them over. Grazing, ranching, fishing, hunting. So if you look at the history of the West and you see the wars that were fought over ranching and the rights to ranching, I know this is so far afield from what people are talking about. Remember the wars of the West, if you ever read any Western history? Even if you read Zane Grey, even if you even went to one John Wayne movie? Many of the battles in the West were over grazing rights. The cattlemen versus the sheepmen, remember? Well, now we're waking up and finding out that the land is going to be turned back for, again, private interests. Yeah, well, that's good. That's privatizing the land. Okay, you could make that argument, but at what point do you understand that privatizing something is not necessarily a good thing? I live next to a bay called San Francisco Bay. I told you at one point in history, this bay was clear and blue and green. It was pristine. It was so clean that the Chinese grew shrimp up in China Camp in the San Rafael area of the Bay Area. It was pure, clean water. Well, you can't grow shrimp here, and if you could, you wouldn't eat it, you'd die. Those days are long over. In fact, San Francisco was built on mounds of clamshells because the native Indians lived to a great extent on hunting and fishing, and scavenging things such as clams and oysters, and it was all in pure water. Well, we know what happens with civilization. We know what happens in time. So you say, so, well, good, that's the way it is. Isn't that privatization? No, that's not what it is. Eventually, you develop a collective consciousness about shared resources. That's what you do if you're not a listener to talk radio. You develop a higher consciousness about shared natural resources. You're not a moronic pig who dropped out of high school and pretends that you're a genius on every subject and says, well, look, just poison the water, kill everything, I eat it. That's stupid. And don't you dare associate me with those oafs. That's what's making me sick in the radio business right now. I refuse to be lumped in with these throwbacks. I'm not them. I never wanted to be them. They disgust me. They disgust me more than the Marxists do. Do you know why? Because at least the Marxists are clear about what they are. They say what they are. The others are phony hypocrites from the top to the bottom. Greedy pigs. All about money, saving their own money and giving it nothing to anybody else. It's exactly the stereotype that people have of the ugly conservative. Do you understand that? Did you get that yet, why people hate conservatives? Because conservatism doesn't mean it's not one size fits all. There should be room in conservatism for people who want to protect shared resources such as airs, waters, and places, a concept going back to Aristotle. And the day you learn what that means is the day you understand why the mafia was stopped from throwing toxins into all the bays and rivers of the New York area. Remember those days? You watched The Sopranos even. Remember? I'm jumping to that. Remember those Sopranos shows when asbestos had been banned from dumping in waters? Why was it banned? You could say, well, it's just water, just the Hoboken River. Hey, what do I care? Just throw the asbestos in there. What do I care? It's crap. Just water. It's a swamp. Well, maybe you get that from talk radio from people who claim they're conservatives. Throw asbestos back into the Hudson River. See if I care. It's good. You can make money off it. Wouldn't it be fiscally conservative to throw asbestos into the Hudson River and the East River? Sure, it would be. Sure, someone would make money. There'd be jobs. The river would be used for something instead of just being a body of ugly water. That's talk radio. That's the stupidity of knee-jerk conservatism. Poison the air, poison the water, poison the land, and call it fiscal conservatism. I've just given you a lesson in what conservatism doesn't mean. It does not mean poison the airs, waters, and places. It means the opposite. It means protect the airs, waters, and places, and protect the animals. And while you're at it, protect the national monuments. That's it. That's the whole story. Back in a minute. Uber. You know them, right? They disclosed the breach of 57 million passengers and drivers' records. Hackers accessed personal information like names and driver's license numbers of the drivers and the passengers, the emails, the phone numbers, all of it stolen. And though this breach was just recently announced, this personal information was actually stolen over a year ago. Did you hear about this? If you're only monitoring your credit, your identity can still be stolen in ways you may not detect. Well, it's a good thing there's LifeLock. They really do a great job. They detect a wide range of identity threats you may miss by just monitoring your credit, such as someone stealing from your 401k or committing a crime in your name. And if they find a problem, a U.S.-based identity restoration specialist will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses. We know that. But LifeLock can help you see more threats to your identity. Please go to LifeLock.com right now or call 1-800-LifeLock, promo code SAVAGE. 1-800-LifeLock, promo code SAVAGE. You're going to get a big 10% off your LifeLock membership. Visit LifeLock.com and save 10% now. Gary, line 3 from WABC. What's on your mind, Gary?
Hi. Listen, I just wanted to say thank you very much for that last segment. I'll tell you the truth, as I told you, the person that I spoke to prior to you, I'm an independent voter. I lean to the left, but I try to listen to all voices, a little bit of all voices every day, okay? And what I found from listening to you over the years was that in moments like this, you call it like it is. I used to work with Howard Cosell years ago, and he was known for calling it like it is. And you did, as far as I'm concerned, with my beliefs about conservationism and how
Right.
it can be.
That's right. And knee-jerk conservatives who are one-trick ponies say, "Oh, this is great. It's giving the land back to the states." Well, I want to ask all of those unthinking Johnnies out there, are we to believe that state bureaucrats are wiser than federal bureaucrats? How is that possible?
Thank you.
That's number one. But number two, it's nothing about giving it back to the states. It's giving it to a few cronies of Zinke and those who put Zinke in power. They're grabbing the land to rape the land and exploit the land. End of story.
Thank you. And
That's all. That's the way it is. There's no other story to this. Oh, you can read a textbook about it's real conservatism, take it away from the federal government. That's wonderful. Ask the Native Americans whose ancestors are buried there, and ask them about the poisoning of the lakes and the rivers and the air that is going to follow when they start building smelting plants in the middle of these monuments. I know what's coming, Gary. I can smell this from a mile away. And by the way, this gives Republicans a very, very ugly image. It is a stereotype of the ugly Republican. It's a stereotype of the brutish conservative that people must overcome in order to get people who are thinking and feeling to join the movement, which is very important on levels such as social issues, for example, fiscal issues, for example. But when it comes to protecting the airs, waters, and places, the Republicans get a resounding F. They've turned the clock back not 10 years, but 100 years. And this must be stopped. I, as a lifelong conservationist, know what the land is, as opposed to those who've sat on their fat behinds their whole lives and don't even walk out for fear that somebody may sneeze on them. It is Rock and Roll Tuesday on the Savage Nation. I have no idea why I pulled out this song. I asked Robert to play it. Who knows? My mind works in strange ways. So here we are, cruising into hour 3 of the Savage Nation. We've covered a lot of different topics. Fiscal conservatism. Is this administration fiscally conservative? A resounding no. Do you own a small business? Will you do better or worse under Trump? You're going to do worse. Are we running the country like a casino or a nation? Is timing right to move the embassy to Jerusalem? A resounding no. Why is he doing it now? Makes no sense. Those are some of the topics. And now into hour 3, I want to change it up a little bit to different topics. And we're not going to talk about taxes or Middle East for a moment. Obama gave a little speech. He's back. For some reason, he wants to stir the pot a little bit. And in the following clip, which is only 30 seconds long, he says, India, a largely Hindu nation, needs to cherish and nurture Muslims. Now, for those of you who know something about the history of Hindus and Muslims, you understand how not provocative this is, but how biased and bigoted this is. To lecture India to cherish and nurture Muslims would be like telling Pakistan to nurture Hindus. But here it is, Barack Obama on telling people in India what to do.
Particularly in a country like India, where you have such an enormous Muslim population that is successful, integrated, and thinks of itself as Indian. Mm-hmm. And that is, unfortunately, not always the case in some other countries, where a religious minority nevertheless feels a part of. I think that is something that should be cherished and nurtured and cultivated.
Now, why would Obama be pushing India to cherish and nurture Muslims when India gave up a huge landmass called Pakistan to create a Muslim nation, and during the Great March, 1 million people died in the war between Muslims and Hindus? Why would he be doing a thing like this at this time? Why? Why, with the middle name of Hussein? Because he is, naturally, as you would expect, an Islamophile. Both of his fathers were Muslims, so he is, by nature, Islamophilic. And he thinks that anyone who doesn't support everything that Muslims do is Islamophobic. That's called an inherent bias. So why he would now try to stir up hatred in India, I can't understand this at all. Why would he tell India to cherish and nurture Muslims? It makes no sense to me. Because as I said to you, study the history of the creation of Pakistan, and you learn all you need to know about the history of Muslims in India. Now, moving on from that, for your listening entertainment and pleasure, I had the guys go back to October 1st, 1994, when some of you were not even born. Is that imaginable? Some people weren't born. I think my assistant was 4 years old at the time. I asked him. He was 5 years old when I was on the radio in 94. I can't believe it. I just can't imagine him as an infant in his mother's arms. But he was 5 years old when I was talking about the following thing. And I said, okay, go back and find. I was obsessive in my early days of radio. As you well know, I'm quite obsessive in what I do because I take everything I do seriously. I know I'm not supposed to. That's an old liberal adage. Only they took themselves seriously, but they used to say, oh, don't take yourself so seriously. Oh, no, why? I'm going to let you take yourself seriously, and I shouldn't? That was another ploy of, why don't you be a gentleman? You'll save that for someone else you want to control. And they used to want to, like, brainwash me and control me. Be a gentleman. What does that mean, gentleman? You know what that means, and turn you into nothing, a worm. But nevertheless, I was obsessive when I began in radio, and I saved every show I did on tape because I knew one day I would create a library. I don't know what for. I just knew that some of the shows I was doing were unique and new and good. And so I saved all these early shows from KSFO Radio in San Francisco on audio cassette, if you can believe it. And I made little program notes. I wrote down the notes of what was on it. So I said to my assistant, go pull a random show and get something out of it so the listeners can judge for themselves whether my voice has changed or my politics have changed. I did not tell him to pull this, but here is the Savage Vault. We never play these things. This is the first of many, I hope. From October 1st, 1994. The plague. Well, the story came out this week why they cannot control it too easily. It turns out that rat worship stymies the plague fight. That's right. In India, health and Hinduism is at odds. They will not kill the rats because one of the subcultures there in Hindu mythology, the elephant-headed god Ganesh, is accompanied by a rat wherever he travels. Therefore, they will not kill the rat. Well, this is an example of multiculturalism at work. And I think perhaps they should teach rat worship at Stanford University instead of public health, don't you? I really do. Perhaps rat worship 101 should go into Stanford University multiculturalism. Seriously, I happen to have Hindu friends. They are beautiful, brilliant people. We're not talking about a religion here. We're talking about a lack of education, okay? This is crazy. Here, this nonsense has to stop, said Kolamesh Chandra Dev, a retired government official in India who started a neighborhood campaign to kill rats in New Delhi. The time has come for people to realize it is either us or the rat. So they're letting the rats go wild, spreading the fleas, which spread the plague. A country of 900 million people, the first plague epidemic in 28 years. And what does it have to do with America? Here's what it has to do with America. They show people coming in from India this week, and the idiot reporters go up to them, the TV reporters go up and say to them, oh, were you concerned about the plague and bringing the plague into America? And the woman says, oh, no, she said, as she got off the plane at SFO. I was concerned that they would quarantine me. But luckily, they only gave me a little card and told me to call if I have symptoms. Hey, great. What a great public health service we have here. Now, in Italy, they take it a little differently. Of course, they also did a dumb, stupid thing. They stopped all planes coming in from India, in Italy, and sprayed the interior of the planes with pesticide. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to kill fleas that might be on the plane. But what if the individual is infected already with the bacteria that the flea is carrying and is not symptomatic? The person is not showing symptoms. So it's another futile gesture. I don't know who's running the public health service, but perhaps they ought to go back to school and stop collecting federal money until they learn how to protect this country. Be that as it may, the cow is not spreading the plague. It's not the issue. Yes, the cow is sacred to tens of millions of people in India. But the issue we have to focus on here is the fact that you have uneducated people worshiping rats and not letting the educated Indian public health workers kill rats.
Savage.
Okay, October 1st, 1994, in the vault, from the Savage Vault. So I'll open it up. What did you think of that? Period. I want to know. Listeners, if you're out there, want to comment on the radio, 855-407-282. I kind of liked it. My policies haven't changed. I was always environmentally very aware, or in this case, epidemiologically very aware. I opposed unbridled immigration from the beginning. While others were ruining lives as lawyers or ruining lives as sportscasters, with rubbish. I was actually out in the fields of this nation fighting for borders, language, and culture. Borders, language, and culture, and rational immigration policies. And I'm still doing it. Proud to say. This is the Savage Nation. If you get a comment on any of the topics of the last hour or of this hour, whether it's moving the embassy to Jerusalem, which I think is a stupid idea, or any of the other topics, that is the phone number to call. Let's begin with a caller that's been hanging on a very long time, which is out of Dallas, Texas, on KLIF. Barry, line 4. Go ahead, please. Barry, you're on the Savage Nation.
Hi, Dr. Savage. I actually agree with you on a lot of points here. I don't think Trump has done what he promised in a lot of areas. He hasn't started building a wall. He hasn't repealed Obamacare. He isn't cutting taxes. But the one area that I disagree with you on is I think moving the embassy to Jerusalem is a promise that he should fulfill, just like all these other promises. In this case, I disagree with you that it's going to cause any kind of unleash terrorism. I mean, terrorism is already there. They're going to find an excuse to terrorize Jews, the West, Israelis, you name it. Moving an embassy to Jerusalem isn't going to be a reason for them to.
All right. So let me ask you, how do we as U.S. citizens benefit by moving an embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? What does it do for the average American?
Well, what does it do for an average American? It shows that if we're going to be an honest broker in the region, in which we are supposed to be an honest broker for peace, that there needs to be a starting point that the Arabs realize is a true starting point. By playing this game that Jerusalem isn't the capital of Israel, it's lying to their face. They have to know that this is the capital of, just like the Washington, D.C. is the capital of America. We chose that as our capital. Israelis have chosen Jerusalem as its capital. Not even Israelis. We can go beyond that, but
well, I would disagree with you, and I would think that this push at this time to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Israel is not being driven by the Israelis per se. I think it's being driven by a very small cadre of American religious people, and they have no concern for what it may do to world peace. And I think that's the big issue here: is why should we antagonize Arabs at all right now? What do we gain by that?
Well, I don't think that. I also disagree with you there. I don't think that we're antagonizing the Arabs. I think we're antagonizing maybe the Persians, Iranians, but I think it's...
Well, I disagree with you because the Palestinians, if you want to call the folks who are of Arab Muslim descent in that area Palestinians, that's fine, just as identity. If that's their identity, that's their decision, not mine. The Palestinians are going to go berserk if the embassy is moved to Jerusalem. And you may argue that it's okay to do so, but this is not the right time, is my point. Why does Trump need to stir the Middle East right now when we have unresolved problems both domestically and internationally? What's to be gained right now is the point. Why now? It's about timing. Everything is timing in this world. That's my point. I'll send you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason, and we can depart friends rather than antagonists. Mickey Malad on line 6. Got time for one quick call. KSFO, people are calling in rapidly on that. Mickey, what's on your mind?
Hey, what's up, Doc? I just wanted to say that hearing that little clip you just played, your brain sounds the same, but your voice sounds much younger. But it's pretty cool to hear that.
Wait, you see my voice sounds younger now?
No, when you...
I'm joking, come on. I'm just joking. Well, it was 1994 was 24 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy.
Well, some people like my voice better now.
You know what? They both sound good. You sound more sophisticated now, I think. But you sounded a little younger and more, I don't know.
A little more raw.
Yeah, a little spring in your step, I guess.
All right, buddy. You're putting your arm around me saying, hang in there, Mike. Can I buy you a beer?
Yeah, you got it.
Stay on the line. I'm sending you as a very special Christmas gift called God, Faith, and Reason. I think I'll start the Christmas music tomorrow on the show and start giving out God, faith, and reason. Listen, folks, I'm having a good time. Not every day is a good day in radio. Most days are great days in radio. Today is a good day. I'll be right back. All right, so I'm giving you all a free gift, Rare Savage Vaults from October 1st, 1994, Hindu Rat Worship. The piece I just played for you, it was recorded on cassette back when I was a local host on KSFO, and I put it up for free on michaelsavage.com. I'll do this intermittently over the coming weeks and months, God willing. And I'm not asking anything in return. It's just for your listening pleasure and your support for the show. And I think a lot of people love archives. I know I do. It's always fun to look back on a show, see how it was, what it sounded like, what the guy sounded like. I can tell by my voice, thank God I'm still good. When I start hearing an old man's voice in me, I'll quit radio. I don't hear it yet. Robert, the voice is the same. It's stronger. It's deeper, better bass, better tenor voice. And the strength is still there. And I know people whose voices change in time. It's inevitable. Time and gravity catches up with all of us. In my case, it's not started really in any direct manner yet. Thank God. I mean, it's all I can say. You know, there's some kind of gift out there. And you got to go with it, whatever happens. You look at Conyers. I mean, you jump around and you say Conyers. You look at the guy. He's really old. He's an old guy. He sounds old. He looks old. Look at Pelosi with all the Botox. She is old. Her brain is old. She's freezing. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She can't finish a sentence. This woman, if she had any grace, she'd step down while she still can step before she falls down. It's a disgrace to watch these old people who won't let go because of power madness. It's a psychosis. I'm not going to be that guy. And the reason is because I don't have to be, because I'm still strong. And I hear it in my voice. To me, the voice is the show, the brain and the voice, right? So the day the voice starts to, sound old, I'm off. There's plenty to do in the world other than radio, believe me. WABC, Joe, line 4, what's on your mind? What's your topic?
Moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem.
Go ahead.
As an Orthodox Jew, I believe, and as my rabbis have explained us, we are against it. It's wrong. It's just going to incite the Arabs. Michael,
So who's pushing this?
This is not a Jewish thing. It's not a religious war. You said before that it's a religious thing that's pushing it. The people who are pushing it are the Zionists. The Zionist movement to push it, to move it to Jerusalem.
So it's not the religious Jews, it's the Zionist Jews that are pushing it, is what you're saying.
Religion. As you point out in God's Faith and Reason, that everyone has to be connected to the Bible or their Bible to be connected to God. They made of their own religion called Zionist, and which they don't have a religion. It's just culturally Jewish.
Interesting.
Right.
Well, that's an interesting definition. But, Joe, I think that whether or not people agree on moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, the issue is timing. The timing could not be worse for one reason. We have domestic problems. We have international problems. This will only make both worse. Why would Trump be advised to do this now? Makes no sense. Michael Savage says, not now, Mr. Trump. Well, there are other topics I haven't gotten to. The killer of Kate Steinle, who walked out of the courtroom laughing, his defense counsel, the violations of the law, or skating as close to it as you can get in his jury instructions. These are shocking, shocking things that we're witnessing. But the most shocking thing about the death of Kate Steinle and the miscarriage of justice and the mockery of a trial here in San Francisco where an illegal alien could kill a white woman and get away with murder because of the political climate of this sick city that I live in is that Governor Brown said nothing, Pelosi said nothing, Feinstein said nothing, the women's movement said nothing. That, my friends, should tell you everything you need to know about the above named. Period. You should learn everything you need to know about how fraudulent these people really are with regard to their statements about women and such. They could care nothing about women. Zero. Nothing. She's a woman, isn't she, Kate Steinle? Wasn't she a woman when she was shot by the illegal alien from Mexico? And by the way, do you know that this judge, who, by the way, should be investigated, I think his name is Judge Chen, who's this stooge? Do you know that this judge who oversaw the Kate Steinle trial could have could have admonished the defense counsel for what that defense counsel said to the jury, because it approached jury nullification, jury tampering. But the judge is a stooge who needs to be investigated by the U.S. Department of Justice. Look into his background, see who put him there on the stench from the bench. The judge also could have permitted the jury in the Kate Steinle case, they asked to see the gun. They asked to see if a gun could go off when it was on the ground, unloaded, simply by stepping on it. And this fraudulent judge, this stooge judge, said no. He would not let the jury determine for themselves whether, as the fraudulent, lying defense counsel, Gonzalez, told them, the gun went off by itself. Guns do not go off by themselves. Guns cannot go off by themselves, not that type of gun. It's impossible. And yet this fake judge, put there by the Democrat socialist machine, Judge Chen, DOJ should investigate him and who put him there. Judge Chen refused to permit the jury to examine the gun and see if it could go off by itself. The whole case stinks from top to bottom. One analogy works for me. Go back in your mind to the 1950s or earlier, when the Ku Klux Klan was running wild in the South and hanging innocent black men, making up crimes and hanging them. If they caught one of these murderers and they tried them, imagine if the jury was made up or selected, handpicked, of henchmen who had put their white robes, their white sheets away, and became jurors. That's what Matt Gonzalez did, in my estimation. The equivalent of the Ku Klux Klan in the South in the 1950s is the protection of illegal aliens at all costs in San Francisco. None of them can be found guilty of any crime with this climate of insanity and lawlessness in this city. It is a violation not only of the law, but of human decency. And the federal government and the DOJ should investigate Matt Gonzalez and the judge in this case and bring the full weight of federal law down upon them if any crimes had been committed. Here is a soundbite from the spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Justice, Sarah Igor Flores, who I agree with 100%. Listen to this 13 carefully.
We unsealed an arrest warrant the day after the verdict down in Texas for him on violating his supervised release. This person was in federal custody when the state of California asked to pursue state charges against him, and so he was sent to California for those. They released him into San Francisco then, and that's when Kate Steinle's death occurred. So we have unsealed that arrest warrant in Texas for the violation of supervised release, and we're looking at other charges as well still in California and Texas. We're going to pursue every available federal charge that we can to ensure that this person sees justice.
It should not be pursued only against the killer of Kate Steinle, but also the defense counsel, also the judge, and also the sheriff at the time, Murakami, in my estimation, who released him into the streets to kill her. There are issues in the courts of accessory to murder. In my estimation, all of the above should be investigated for accessory to the murder of Kate Steinle. And I rest my case at this time, but I'm not letting this go. This is just the beginning of justice for Kate. It's not over. It's just begun. And her memory will not die simply because Governor Brown wants it to go away by attacking Trump, and just because Freeze Face wants it to go away by attacking Trump, or just because Bulletproof Vest wants it to go away by attacking Trump. It is not going away. I believe that when the federal government starts its investigation of the scam called the trial of the murderer of Kate Steinle, once they begin that investigation, it will lead right up to the top as to why this murderer walked free. That's right. No justice, no peace. The federal government is no longer controlled by Barack Obama. It's controlled by an opposition party, and they're going to get what they gave. They're going to get what they gave. By the way, if you want the Savage newsletter, you can get it free 3 times a week or so by going to michaelsavage.com, and you'll have it come into your email e-box for nothing, for free. It's that simple. All right, many topics. Time is a running. It's one of those days. For some reason, I just feel good about the show today. Not every day is as easy as today. I began with the fiscal conservatism because no one seems to be talking about it. All of these so-called conservatives in the media don't even remember there was once a time that the words fiscal conservative had a meaning. All these so-called conservatives in the media, and so righteously conservative in the media, don't even mention the national debt anymore. Well, I guess if you're licking boots and you have so much shoe polish on your tongue, you forget a lot of things. It starts to poison your brain. What do you want to talk about? KSFO, Paul, line 8, go ahead, please.
Mike, I called originally because you were asking about your voice as a younger man versus an older man, and I did not have the pleasure of listening to you when you were a younger man, and after listening to it, I love you much more right now. Your voice is great. It has the voice of wisdom behind it. Your New York accent is better now. I don't know. It seemed to be subdued in that clip.
I'll bet you're right. I'll bet I was subconsciously trying to control my New York accent in 1994 for fear I'd be thrown off the radio.
It might have been, but I'm telling you, you don't have to worry about your voice. I don't think you're ever going to have to worry.
No, I'm not worried about it at all. I'm just saying that if I hear my voice getting weaker, if I start hearing myself, I'm gone. I'm not going to stay on the air.
Well, sir, yeah, you wouldn't. That wouldn't be good being the professional radio host. But on Kate Steinle, that was awful. That was a tragedy, and
it's not only it's a miscarriage of justice. The Ku Klux Klan reigns in San Francisco, only they call themselves liberals. They are the Ku Klux Klan of today. They don't wear white sheets. They wave a flag of another nation inside their hearts. I'm sending you God, faith, and reason, because God will see justice in this city as sure as I'm sitting here. Okay, what other topic are we talking about? Moving the embassy? All right. Hillary on KSFO, line 3, what's on your mind?
Savage, I've listened to your show religiously for the last 12 years. I have a very active job. I stopped everything I was doing when I heard your voice, your go back to 1994 voice. I said, who is this sexy, articulate person? And then within listening it, 2 seconds, I was like, oh my gosh, that's Michael Savage. You have...
Wait, I'm missing. You mean you tuned in when I was playing the 1994 tape?
Yes. And I stopped. I have a very active job, and I stopped what I was doing, which I normally can't do. I had to know who was the sexy, articulate guest caller on the Michael Savage. And as soon as I started actually got close to my phone to really listen, I knew it was you within 2 seconds. Your voice...
I don't understand. You're mixing me up. You're saying you heard my archive tape and you didn't know who it was?
I didn't originally know who it was because I have an active job, so I wasn't very close to my phone. I was just hearing from a distance. And as soon as I got close to my phone to really tune in, because I had to know who that was. I knew it was you. So your voice...
All right, well, it's neither here nor there. I don't quite... I mean, I'm on the radio every day now, but I was just playing an old archive tape for some fun to see if you would hear any changes in the voice. What did you detect? Any changes?
You've gone from the voice of sexy to the voice of reason, but not an old man. You're still...
Oh, thank you. Oh, shall I get out a glass of warm milk tonight?
I almost didn't know if I could keep listening to you if you still had that sexy voice, but I'm glad you now have the voice of...
Oh, that's touching.
Thank you for that.
Well, wait, are you saying my voice was more moving when I was younger than it is now?
It was very sexy and very moving, yes.
The younger me. How do you like? So you're telling me I lost something?
No, you've gained everything because I have anxiety if I don't listen to your show every day. So you've lost nothing.
All right, it's a mixed bag. Hey, guess what? Time changes everything. And to all of my detractors out there, let's see how you sound at my age. Most of you will be 6 feet under. How's that? I'm sending you God, faith, and reason. See, I intend to be the last man standing in radio. I made up my mind. No one knows this. I am motivated by a lot of different factors. I actually have never said this in 24 years, and I don't know why I'm revealing so much of this. I made up my mind that in time I'd be the last man standing. And many of them are 20 years younger than me. My goal is to be the last major conservative talk radio star left on the radio. That's my goal. That's my goal. And with God's will, it will happen. I want to be the last man standing. Whether the fates will have it that way is out of my control. Or God has it that way, it's out of my control. Why do I want to be the last man standing? Because I parted the Red Sea for millions of people with borders, language, and culture. I originally parted the Red Sea for a reason. And I brought many of you to the promised land, but we're not there yet. We thought we were there when Trump was elected. And now we found out that, well, he can't do what he promised. We're not naive. I told you we weren't going to get 100% of what he promised. I scaled it back to 50%. Then as things went on, soon after the inauguration, I said if we get 20% of what Trump promised, we'll be 120% better off than under Hillary. Did I not say that? Right now, I think we're getting about 10 to 15% of what he promised, would be my guesstimation. He's really doing great on immigration. I don't really know what else. I mean, I'm trying to grope here. I mean, he did great on the immigration. Supreme Court, terrific. It looks like they're going to go the right way on most of the issues for the next 25 years, which is a very good thing. That's a great thing. The legacy will be great there. But on many other things, we're very disappointed, but we never expected 100% of what he promised. No one could deliver that. So if we're running 15% of what he promised, that's 15%. Add 100 to that. That's 112 to 150% better than under Hillary. And we have to take pleasure in that. Now, what tomorrow will bring is another story. This obsession with this Mueller thing. I know many of you say fire Mueller, but you're not thinking. You're not thinking what will happen when he fires Mueller. All hell will break loose, and Congress will convene, and they will reappoint Mueller under a congressional investigatory committee. So what are you going to gain by that? All it's going to do is make people who are not sure about what's going on change their opinion against him. He would be better off not firing Mueller. It's one of the greatest mistakes he could ever make. It's so stupid to listen to people not think. It's just an emotional thing. Oh, fire Mueller. And then what? You think Mueller disappears? Congress does their own investigation. They hire Mueller to run it. Then what? What are you going to do then? Fire Congress? Doesn't exactly work that way. 855-407-282. Let's go back to one of the first questions I raised, which is, do you run a small business? Would you do better or worse under Trump's tax plan? As opposed to knee-jerk bootlickers, I know you're going to do worse. John on KSFO line 8, go ahead, tell us what you think.
It's not what I think, it's what I'm worried about. I have 2 Schedule C businesses and a Schedule E, and I'm worried about how my write-ups are going to be affected. Right now, I do concrete, and I'm in the Bay Area. I do concrete pumping, and so my equipment is a write-off. All my supplies are a write-off. But if they're telling me my Schedule C is going to be diminished, what am I going to do? All that material and all the equipment costs are going to eat right into my profits. And then I might as well go and work under a W-2 for somebody else.
But, John, that's my point. The only beneficiaries of this tax plan are large mega corporations whose taxes are going to be reduced to 20%. So it was a payoff to the gigantic corporate interests, period. The very base that voted for Trump, the small business people, the independent businesses, the S corporations are getting screwed, period. That's the way it is, John.
Okay, so a guy like me that has 2 different businesses and a rental company, what am I supposed to do?
You're going to pay more. You're going to pay more. That's what we got as a result of this so far. So unless the House rectifies the Senate bill, we got a worse off deal than we would have, because if the Democrats ever proposed such a deal, it would have been a huge outcry, and they probably would have backed off. Let me send you God, Faith, and Reason, because right now it's in God's hands, not in Trump's hands. Well, we're going to play a song called Misty, aren't we, Robert? Did we find that song? Oh, no, let's hear the song Misty. This song is dedicated to the caller, the woman caller who said that I was my voice was very sexy. And she said it 5 or 6 times. This reminds me of the Clint Eastwood movie, Play Misty for Me. Do you remember that movie? Does anyone remember that movie with Clint Eastwood? I loved it. Okay, turn it off. It's just like nothing. I'd rather talk about Mueller. Years ago, there was a movie called Play Misty for Me, and it was a great movie set in Monterey, California. Clint Eastwood was the star of the movie, and he played a disc jockey in a small radio station in Monterey, and he played music till early in the morning, and one of the women, listeners, starts to stalk him, and it turns into a nightmare. I think I'm going to go find that tonight. I remember he drove an XK140 drop-head coupe in that movie. Now, I have an XKE and a 150 drop-head coupe, but I don't have a 140 drop-head coupe, thank God, because I'm not looking for Misty.